Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Matt Williams. I'm a tutor in politics here at Jesus College, the University of Oxford. Now, what are you thinking right now? What thoughts are going through your mind? Could you explain them to me or to somebody else? The reason for asking you that is that actually that type of question is pretty much the standard question that you would be asked in any Oxford University interview for any subject. Medicine, history, mathematics, law, you name it. What sort of questions will come up? They will tend to have at their sort of essential core a question along the lines of, what do you mean by that? Can you tell me what you're thinking? The reason is that our brains are absolutely incredible, capable of holding all sorts of thoughts simultaneously, but a lot of those thoughts are perhaps more impressions formed from what other people have told us or from experiences or from emotions. And they get a little bit scrambled up, and it can be quite difficult for us to express very clearly and plainly what those thoughts are. And in an Oxford interview, a tutor like me, and there will always be more than one tutor so that lots of people get to talk to you so that you don't feel too intimidated, we will just ask you how you are thinking and what your thought processes are. The reason for doing that is to help distinguish between those candidates that have memorized a lot of facts but don't necessarily understand those facts versus those that really get it, that really understand the material to the extent that they could explain it, they could describe the material to anyone. They could describe it even to a young child. Even something as complicated as Einstein's theories of special relativity, they could explain the nuts and bolts of that to a child. And that's someone who really gets it. They are conscious of their thoughts. So this got me to notice that actually the way we interview at Oxford utilises a methodology not dissimilar to analytical psychology and psychotherapy. In psychotherapy, an individual is encouraged to talk through the various impressions in their mind, the thoughts, the emotions, the states of mind that they are having are a sort of scrambled jumble of all sorts of elements. And those people will feel better if they are able to talk through them, because once they talk through them, then they can put into words what is going on in their minds. And then potentially they can act on them, and hence the therapy comes about through talking. And we're not therapizing anyone, I should strongly emphasize, in an Oxford interview. But what we are doing is to just got to get a sense of how clear and systematically can you explain something really complicated. And that's why we ask sometimes quite bafflingly obtuse questions such as, what makes a good joke? And it's the sort of thing that gets us in trouble with the papers, because they think, oh God, here's Oxford and Cambridge going again with just complete nonsense. What are they doing? What we're doing is that we're trying to encourage you to think laterally, but also to sort of be absolutely clear and systematic in your thoughts. If, for example, I was to ask you, what do you think makes for a good joke? You would have to explain to me what you think good means in that context. And so if you started to just say, well, I think good jokes are those that make me laugh a lot. Great, that's a fantastic start. But then I'll really dig into the weeds of that. I'll ask you, well, what do you mean by laugh? And what do you think makes us laugh? And what is laughter? So what I'm doing is I'm deconstructing every word you say in order to try and encourage you to be more conscious, more aware of what exactly it is that you are saying. Because so often what we say, we're not terribly conscious of. What we say could be a product of an impression that someone else has planted in our minds, or it could even be just us regurgitating something verbatim that somebody else told us. Now, the upshot of all of this is that to perform well at an interview, and frankly not just at Oxford, but any interview in your life, get used to paying very close attention to the question, and also get used to explaining the thought processes in your mind really clearly, really systematically, and going right back to basics. What do I mean by that word? What did I mean by that particular idea? How could I explain that to someone who's not familiar with this material? So to think sort of as to what a bad performance at interview would look like, or at least a poor performance, maybe bad is a strong word, but a poor performance at interview would be someone who is lapsing into unconsciousness. They are just saying things that sound clever, but they don't really understand what they mean. And we can tell they don't understand what they mean because when we push back and say, what do you mean by that? The candidate will struggle to explain. Other things that tend to crop up when people lapse into that form of unconsciousness is pretentiousness. Someone pretends to be someone they're not. They start using lots of language, jargon, for example, from a particular field because they think it sounds clever, but they don't really know what it means and they're not perhaps using it appropriately, but they're just using it to sound clever. Now, we would strip through all of that. We would encourage you to explain, oh, what did you mean by that bit of jargon that you used there? Could you explain it a bit more clearly? We're seeking clarity. Another common problem is obstinacy, where someone is sort of quite rigid in their ways of thinking. And when we encourage them to think about alternatives, they struggle to do so. And again, that's often a symptom of being slightly unconscious in your thought processes. You're not entirely clear to yourself what it is you mean. Now, the upshot of all of this is that to practice for an Oxford interview or for any form of interview in your life, like a job interview or anything like that, just get used to very clearly explaining your thought processes so that someone else can understand. And ideally, the best discipline is to get used to explaining your thought processes to someone who has no connection to your field, who could even be quite young and totally inexperienced. So if you've got a young sibling, for example, maybe explain Einstein's theories of relativity to them. See how far you can get. Because that is such a good discipline. It teaches us to be absolutely clear as to our thought processes. Do I actually understand what I'm saying? Or have I got a vague impression of it in my mind that someone else has implanted there and I'm just about able to say it again the way they told it, but I don't really understand it, nuts and bolts. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. We're looking for you to really get the material by explaining what it is that you mean. Now, of course, no one performs this perfectly because it is a very difficult task. So don't worry if you struggle with this, because it is a struggle, and it's a struggle that I continue to grapple with myself. But the key thing is to just get used to asking yourself, what did I mean by that? What was I thinking there? Why was I thinking that? And how could I explain that to somebody else? That's the core skill that we're looking for, and it makes for incredibly powerful individuals and very strong academics, and so that's why we ask it. In order for you to have a practice of this, I will put some past Oxford interview questions in the description below. Have a look, see what you think about them, try and explain your answers to the people around you, and put some answers in the comments as well below, and I'd love to engage with you on those. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope this has been of some help. If not, let me know and ask me any questions you might have in the description. Not the description, the comments. All right, thanks very much, everyone. Bye now.